Hi everyone and welcome to episode 11 of Stacks of Questions. Joining me today are my esteemed colleagues Morag Shaw and Colin Lamont, and we are going to be embarking on a new challenge this week. So let me introduce it. This week's challenge is called the Exit parameter pass, and what these guys' task is going to be is to try and draft 3 exit tickets or prompts, questions, something like that, for a selected topic, which we'll spin on the wheel in just a second. One of these exit tickets is going to be to check a recall for the kids. The second one is going to be to check application, and the last one is looking forward and is going to be to try and check transfer of knowledge into a new context of some kind. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to spin the wheel to try and make sure that both the teams have a different unit, just to see how it goes. So the red team, Colin, that's your team, isn't it?
Yep.
Yep. You are going to be doing software, which I'm sure Morag's gutted about. And Morag, you are going to be doing computer systems.
Fantastic.
Good, not good, harder challenge? Not entirely sure. You guys get started on your challenge, and I am going to introduce everybody to this week's guest. Okay, so joining me tonight we have Jeni Tweed. She is a teacher of computing science at St Columbus High School in Gourock and has been teaching for 14 years. Hi Jeni, thank you for joining us.
Hi.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Yeah, good, thank you, great. So tell us, before we get started, I want to do this a little differently, okay? Because you've obviously been teaching for 14 years, but you've recently kind of moved school. So tell us a little bit about your situation before we kind of get into the nitty gritty of the questions.
Okay, so I taught in a school in Renfrewshire for 11 years of my career, and I moved just because I had a family and I wanted to be closer to home. So I moved to another school in Gourock for a year and on a temporary contract. So I actually left my permanent contract behind to go to a temporary contract, which was really scary. And then I moved to St Columbus High School. So I was there last year and then this year. This year I got made permanent.
Nice.
Which
Congrats.
Excellent. In order to do that though, the job was actually a computing and business teacher.
Okay, so you're dual.
Last year I absolutely hammered Open University and I got all my courses that I had to do. And at Christmas there, that was me completely qualified to teach business as well.
Okay, but the plan is obviously to build up your computing science, is that right? Have as many classes as possible.
Yeah, which
awesome.
Is happening.
Great. So let's look at our questions then. So what we wanted to really focus on this week was kind of like progression. So looking at focus on really looking at BGE and then how the kids are moving forward into National 5 and just like uptake and things like that. So how good is our uptake? Gender balance, things like that. So some of the questions I've put in are more focused on that, building departments and making them a little bit bigger. So to start off with, what do you feel that you've embedded since you've moved to St Columbus sort of into the BGE to improve your uptake, do you think?
So when I started last year, we actually had a common course in the Department for Computing, Business and Admin all the way up to 3rd year.
Ooh,
so there wasn't a divide once we got to S3, so it was just called S3 ICT. Which, to be honest with you, didn't really work because the pupils didn't realise the difference between all of the subjects. So The first thing we've done is we have made sure that we have our specialist subjects in S3. So this year is the first year that we've got our specialist subjects back in S3. And last year we did a lot of work with S2, making sure they knew, the differences between all of the courses.
Mm-hmm.
So that when it came to their choices, they knew what they were choosing.
Yeah.
And actually that worked because we managed to get to full classes of S3 Computing Science.
Nice.
This year. So this is what we've got just now currently.
Okay.
Which is really good.
That's amazing, yeah. And so just to kind of clarify, so you're doing business and computing. Is there more people in your department with business and computing or just you or?
So it's just me that does business and computing. My principal teacher.
Uh-huh.
Name plug, because he told me to plug his name, Gordon Burke. He he teaches computing science, and the other teacher in the department teaches business and admin.
Okay, so there's a proper split then of 1.5 effectively of both. Okay, perfect. Yep. So with the uptake then, and you've now got this obviously increased to computing science classes, which is amazing. Yep. How do you feel the gender balance is, and do you think there's anything that's, you know, have you got more girls now than previously you had before, or where is that sort of at?
So the gender balance isn't there yet. I've only got 7 out of 42 computing science pupils in S3 that are girls.
Okay.
But I had to relook at the figures just before I left school today for next year, and that is looking better. We've increased it to 12, and it's actually 12 out of 37. So there's it's like over 30%. Or about 30%, that have picked computing, which is good. So it's going in the right direction.
Yeah. And is there anything in particular you think that attributes to that? Because I'm quite lucky in that we actually have quite a good uptake of girls where I am at Woodmill High School. And it's something that people always ask me. And I'm interested to know whether, if you think there's a reason behind it. I know what I think my reason is, but I'd be interested to hear what another school, what your thought is.
I think, well, given the uptake for next year, I think there might be a couple of reasons for that. I do think it helps if you have a female member of your computing science team.
Okay.
I think that helps, because I think it's somebody that they can maybe like relate to maybe a little bit better. I'm not sure. So I do think that helps. But also this particular year, I've focused on things like the Cyber First Girls competition. So kind of pushing computing science with girls. So I think that's helped for next year's uptake, and it's something that I'm going to be continuing to push like in the coming years. I am launching the dress code club after Easter for girls.
Oh, that's exciting. Nice.
And they're excited. They are. I said I've got 20 spaces, and I launched it on Friday, and I've got 16 already.
Nice.
That have signed up. So I think just continuously pushing that, and yeah, that's basically what I think. What do you think?
Mine kind of links into our next question. So I've found previously that when I've compared myself or done moderation activities with other schools around my locality, we do a lot more assessment in BGE. So every kind of unit that we teach, we do a practical or a theory assessment, kind of similar to what you would do for a National 5 assignment, but obviously toned right down for first or second years. And the same for theory stuff, problem solving style questions. So they're getting into that. And I find girls really respond to that. Boys think that they're good at everything, you know, when they're that young age and they just love computing and they're just like, yeah, I love gaming. And they don't need to be sold it effectively. Girls, I think, don't think that they're good at things. And I don't know if the level of assessment that we have, the girls can see quite clearly that they have the skills and they're good. And I think that definitely, for us personally, has brought more girls in. I think next year my advanced higher class might have more girls than boys. This year I've got 50-50 girls and boys in the two higher classes. So that's the only thing that I can attribute it to. But I'd be interested to speak to a few other people. Most people I speak to don't have as many girls, so it is an interesting conversation to look at. I do think you're right. I think about the girl role model. We've went from having two female members of staff to 2 females and a male, and now we're 2 males and a female. But I would say our uptake is still going up and up with girls. So, but there has always been a female, so I think there is that role model there potentially. I don't know. Yeah, you're never like sure, are you?
Yeah, I think you're right in what you say though. Like I think girls like to kind of feel that success and see that success as well.
Yeah, they don't presume it. I think they definitely, and that kind of leads nicely into my next question, because my next question was going to be like, what do you guys do in the BGE? And it might just be an S3, maybe if that's more computing, but what do you do with like tracking the pupils so that I suppose they can see that they're having success, girls or boys? And want to continue with computing science? Is there any sort of like, obviously not everything, but like any things that you think you do in particular that helps?
I track continuously. I'm actually obsessive over tracking. and I've got all my spreadsheets that I absolutely love. But I track period by period the progress that they're making through particular topic or unit, because I do find, especially in S1, S2, see when you're only getting them for a couple of periods, they come back in the next week and they can't remember where they left off, if it's, you know, like tasks that follow on from each other, they can't remember. So I can just tell them right away, this is where you left off. So I track continuously. And also track, when it comes to assessment, I look at both theory and practical. They also quite like that in the practical assessments, they can use it's like open book.
Yeah, very similar to assignment. That's what we do. Very similar.
Yeah, explaining to them that actually, yeah, this is what we do. We do this in National 5, we do this in Higher, we do this in Advanced Higher. Practical assessments are open book, and getting them like really used to that and talking about their progression before they progress as well seems to be working also.
Fantastic. Okay, so I just want to finish off really, and all the stuff you said is really, really good and really useful, I think. But if you have somebody who's moved to like a new school, right? They're a one-man department, you know, they've not been a big uptake of computing and they want to grow the department, like what would be your sort of one piece of advice, or your first point of action, maybe is a better way to word that, for if they want to increase their uptake? Well, where would you sit? Like, what's your first piece of advice?
I think they should start by looking at the national courses and working backwards, so that they can then structure their BGE courses, make it engaging, make it fun, but keeping that relevance to, you know, the national courses, so you can always kind of speak about them. You know, this is what you do in S4, etc. I also think that computing science can be perceived as being quite tricky. So a lot of tasks, I like to just use that kind of scaffolding approach. So do this task before you move on to the next bit, and just kind of build on, like, especially in software development, like build on their skills using that kind of scaffolding approach. So that's what my advice would be, I think.
That sounds amazing, and I look forward to, maybe we'll get you back in Stacks of Questions next year and you can tell us about your uptake again, see if it's even better, look at the statistics.
It'll definitely be better. That's the plan.
That's what I like to hear. It's solid in our ideas. Fantastic. Okay, shall we go over to Morag and Colin and see how they've been getting on with their challenge? Okay, Colin, so you were given software design and development. Tell us a little bit about your exit tickets.
So I've gone for a bit of higher code, so the refunction that just takes in a parameter and then adds one to it and returns the new number. So my kind of recall would be state the local variable used in the code above. So just read the code and pick out that local variable. And then the kind of more applying that knowledge and more of a sort of exam style question, I suppose, would be explain the scope of a local variable. So now you know which one it is, what is the scope of it, and then they kind of apply it to a different context would be writing some code, write a wee function that takes in 2 parameters and returns the total, and see if they can do that. It depends on your exit ticket about how much code you can get them to write, if it's a post-it note or whatever, but I thought that was something to at least keep those who know a bit more busy writing some code.
Absolutely. Although effectively, I suppose you could use each exit ticket separately. They don't have to be used all at the same time. Just 3 ideas on the same piece of code, potentially.
Possibly.
Fantastic. Okay, Morag, let's come over to yours then, with your computer systems.
Okay, well, I've gone for higher computer systems, and I've gone for something a wee bit different. I've gone for the security risks and precautions because I was fed up looking at the data representation processor structure, so I've gone for this. So in recall, I've got details of payments from customers to an online retailer are secured using encryption, and simple recall state which key is shared, can be shared and distributed widely without compromising security. Application. Explain how public key encryption allows 2 people to communicate securely without sharing the secret key. and sort of transferring that knowledge was quite difficult. Company signs software updates using a digital signature. Explain how this helps prevent attackers from distributing malicious software disguised as an update.
Very cleverly done, very cleverly done. So over to you, Jenny. Let's have a chat about what you thought of our ideas.
Well, this is really difficult because I actually like both of them.
There's only one winner, though.
But there's only one winner.
Tell us your pros and cons. What was your highlights?
Morag, the pictures were great. They really were.
Good,
I know you enjoyed those pictures. No, I thought they were both really well thought out. I was trying to work it out based on which one would I most likely use in my classroom. And the one that I would most likely use in my classroom is Colin's.
I hate to say I agree. I think you did a valiant job, Morag, to be honest, coming up with that.
Systems, come on.
Yeah, the systems one, an absolute valiant job. But I thought Colin's was very good as well, actually. So looks like it's going to be a point to the red team. Episode 11. Shall we go over and have a look at the scores on the doors? So that means that going into our final episode, the red team have 6 points, and hot on their tail is Mrs. Shaw and the blue team with 5 points. So very, very well done from both of our teams this week. A huge thank you to our special guest, Jenny. Thank you for coming along and for scoring for us.
Thank you for having me. I've loved it.
Good, I'm glad you've enjoyed it. And we will see you all next week for our last episode of the season. So don't forget to tune in. We're going to be talking a little bit about progression and transitions from BG International 5 and above. So tune in for that, and we'll see you all next week. See you later, guys. Goodbye.